Ladies and gentlemen, it is Tuesday. And because it's Tuesday, that means we're joined by our good friend, Third Mike, Ryan Cristian, Last American Vagabond. What's happening, brother? How you doing?
Good
Woohoo!
morning. What's going on, guys?
What's
Good
going
to see
on,
you, my friend.
buddy?
Oh, I'm tired today, man. I don't know what's going on. Feeling under the weather, but I have a very, very mild headache and a little bit of some sniffles. So maybe it's COVID.
Oh, damn.
Just kidding.
You're going to have to get a shot. Get
You
your
should
QR
probably-
code.
No.
You
That's the
should
last
probably
thing I would do.
quarantine for the next 3 years. In fact, I'm a little bit disappointed you're not already in a hazmat suit. My personal health feels compromised because I'm looking at the screen and we do not appear to be 6 feet apart. So I'm a little bit nervous.
If you could move back, put your mask on, please. I would really
I may have
appreciate
to
it.
go put my masks on.
I don't know. Do you guys sometimes feel that you're getting sick because these people who are fucking vaccinated are shedding their bullshit? I don't know.
So, I know. I mean, that's nothing to dismiss. That's a very real topic. I definitely think that's a factor. I don't know to what degree. Even people that talked about the shedding of both spike or mRNA are the very same people that will say, but we don't really know how well defined it is, and so on, right? But it's for sure. I mean, Dr. Warren, Luigi Warren, and Dr. McCullough, and plenty of others on different sides of it. Luigi Warren being the spike protein have all come out and said that. Salk Institute said the spike protein by itself can cause disease, which means you can spread it. So I've often talked about that as the possible self-spreading example already in existence. It's very weird, but just for me personally, I just think I just a lot going on personally and professionally, and so I'm just like tired, not sleeping well. That's all. I was just making a joke because it's COVID is less than the flu, and we should all anyone who pays attention to the actual peer-reviewed science and is critical can see that the leading the Ionitis Group's most recent research says that before infection, it was something like between 0.6 and 0.7 world around. And if you're under 19, it was 0.0003, maybe one more zero even, I forget. But it's just like basically like benign. Like think about how crazy that is. Like I often joke about how Oxford's calculator around the risk of COVID that's been out since like 2021. It is always maintained that under 19, the risk of dying from COVID is 1 in a million. And I laugh about that because jokingly in our society, we make that statement to mean like impossible, right? Oh, it's 1 in a million. That'll never happen. It's like, it's just funny how these things are all on the record and people are still scared. There's a new variant. Did you know that? And we're all supposed to be scared about it again.
Is this the Decepticon variant?
Yeah, whatever. Arturus or something. I don't know. It's just a new thing in India. And now they're all going, oh no, somebody just died. And now it's coming back around.
Oh, geez.
Same old game.
Well, Mr. Smarty Pants, since you seem so smart, you know everything over here about the COVID and the statistics. Let's pretend for a second you're Joe Biden's campaign manager. Now that he's announced that he's running for re-election, how do you push forth with it for his second term from a guy who seemed to just fall in the mud every single time he was by a microphone, or every time he had to make a decision on everything? I mean, it seems like the world is closer to being annihilated or blown up, and Joe Biden's at the driver's seat, but yet they want to run this guy again. Oh, and by the way, no debates during the primary, so RFK will not be able to get in there and go after him.
We should talk about that. I've only seen secondhand information about that, and I know that that's but just so it's clear, it wouldn't surprise me at all. The DNC, we know that they've done things like this in the past, but whether or not it actually happens is all. I don't like how quickly things will kind of spin around the media, this independent media, and yes, I've seen the caption and the statement saying that, well, we won't, primary debates and so on. But I don't know. I just, until it happens, I'm usually a little bit more reserved on that in general. But it wouldn't surprise me at all. We know the DNC cheated and openly said that they could, and it's no big deal. But to your point really quickly, just since I was sitting there thinking the whole time, I wish I was better at improv immediate comedy. When you were setting me up right there to pretend to be Biden's person, I was like, that's a perfect setup for some kind of funny exchange. And I'm like, I'm not.
Joe Biden is busy doing the hard work of governing right now. And because he's out there leading the American people, we're not going to waste anyone else's time with a pro forma debate or anything. Like when the American people know that Joe Biden's out here doing the work, you can look at the track record. Well, don't look at the actual tracks because they'll make things fall off and explode. But you can turn around and you can look at what's been accomplished in terms of completely destroying the American economy and pushing us into World War III, where this is not the opportunity. It's not the moment.
Yeah.
To change leadership.
Steve, This is great. I do me a favor though. If you can find a way to get the words equity and inclusivity into that speech, it would be so much better. But go ahead. That was
Look,
great.
we all know
Good
that
job.
this has been the most inclusive administration
There we
in
go.
history.
There we
You can look at throughout each position in the administration and find everyone from a dog walking thief to an absolute incompetent that we have elevated to the position of press secretary.
It's hard to
There is
tell
no
all
one
of
that
it
has
for
been
that.
more equitable
I was gonna say, it's hard
in
to tell which one
terms
you're
of
talking about.
allowing the retard Americans to be represented in any administration.
Wait, what about the guy who steals the luggage? What's I keep forgetting his name. Sam Britton, I believe it is. So is that his name?
I forget.
Or
That's
her
always
name?
familiar.
I'm
but
so
I was-
sorry.
The Biden administration has been able to highlight the mental health crisis in America in a very unique way by placing it front and center into key positions in the administration.
Beautiful. Beautiful. See
I
what I'm
honestly
talking
don't.
about?
Go ahead.
No, that was
I
it.
could
That's all
probably
that's
do
all
this
I had
for
to say.
another hour.
No,
Yeah, we could cut it. Yeah.
I honestly like just thinking about the the joke of. I don't think Trump's administration was any different at all. Like, I mean, the only thing people point out is that it's obviously worse, but is that really because Biden? I mean, like, I'm not going to dispute that Biden could. I think they're both very bad and in their own special ways. They're all part of the illusion. That's my personal opinion. I do offer the caveat that I think that Trump could be used. Like, it's possible that he's not aware he's being used. I only add that because it's possible. I don't necessarily think that, but it's Trump initiated all the things that have allowed this administration to do all of the things that put us in this very position. And that's both Trump, China, Russia, everything. And so it's frustrating that we look at it and, Trump hands the baton to Biden and he just carries this thing through. And yet it's all, I mean, by default, it's Trump's better because look at how bad things are now. It's like, well, couldn't you have made that argument? I mean, it's just the same political game. And I think we need to stand back and realize that it's all the same stuff. And to bring it back to the RFK point about the debates, it just does. None of this makes much sense to me. I just like with Gabbard, I really want to believe that RFK is going to be somebody who's going to change things. And I don't know why anybody would not want that. That's the same thing with Trump. Wouldn't we all want someone to be what they pretend Trump is? The people that just wanted America to fail because they hated Trump, those are children, right? Those are just bad people. But RFK, I want to believe he's doing something. There's a lot of examples, like his comments about climate change deniers going to jail. That was a while ago, but I find it hard to believe that that stance has changed a lot. But either way, how do you make sense of Trump? Very openly, like warp speed is like my prize jewel in my career. And then over here, you've got RFK. Because my point, people are talking about them like running together, like RFK is going to like end up becoming his vice. How does that even possibly make sense? That's coming from the Republican side. But RFK is a Democrat. He's running Democrat, which that would be an interesting kind of, I don't know if that's a first or not, but that would open up a door to like things are changing kind of discussion. But they're very different on the vaccine. Go ahead. I don't understand how that makes sense in the minds of people pushing that.
Because they want heroes and they want people that they're already comfortable with, that they think they know how to navigate the landscape to do their work for them. And that's really what it comes down to. If we were in a position, and I mean this as a society, is the way that the current government operates. If we were in a position to where a Kennedy Democrat could run a clean campaign and legitimately completely clean house in government, then there would be lots of reasons for people to be like, oh yes, this is a very good idea. But you've got RFK Jr. himself telling you, I'm a traditional liberal Democrat. This is what that means to me. I believe that the mechanism of good change in this country comes through the political system. And the problem is we've got, too much money in politics, blah, 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 blah. But there's no real, look, if there's a recognition of the deep state, it's to be like, yeah, but I'm friends with them now. or I've got family members that are a part of that now.
Let me ask
Some-
I think he's trying to sell himself as a compromise candidate, saying that this is the political climate we're dealing with, and we have to get some change somehow, and this is a vessel to get there. I think at the end of the day, it is about medical freedom. It is about his position on the vaccine and
if he
whatnot.
thought,
So I mean,
okay, so let me ask this then, because if he thought that this was a vessel to do that,
mhm.
as opposed to all of the other vessels that he's been using for his entire career. Because as far as I know, this is the first run for office from RFK Jr. ever, correct?
Mm-hmm.
I believe so, yeah.
So
Really
he's
not a
got-
political guy, right? He's not
got his
really been in
entire
politics.
life. So obviously he thinks this is the vessel to do that, not the best-selling books and speaking tours and all of that. The entire media landscape that he was at least able to navigate that way. That wasn't how you reach people. That's not how you get the message across. How you get the message across is by entering politics at 60 something
Yeah.
in 2023, thinking that the Democratic Party is the proper vessel by which you enact meaningful substantive change in the country.
Let me ask you this. So I get the point you're making is, I don't know if we can assume that he thinks it's the only vessel, but it's a fair point to make that the implication is if that's the direction, then arguably the other ones aren't at least as good or something. I get it. But that's a fair point. But let me ask you this, and this I think will set the table for people that may wonder why there's a lot of people, even with Gabbard, they're like, why are you attacking the only sound candidate? It's like, no one's attacking anybody. We're just having a sound and objective conversation. And this is what we need to be. If anyone's honest, like I said before, they should welcome this kind of objective criticism, not attacking people for beliefs or opinions, but debating it and asking, what's the merit to this? Right. So do you think that he truly believes that, for whatever reason, because his wife still maybe buys into this, however you look at this, that he believes that you can affect change through this political system? That's an important question, because I think that's almost juvenile, that we can look at the reality of what the DNC has done. Well, I mean, even more so, take it outside of just the political system, or maybe one more step in and argue just through the DNC, through running as a Democrat. Like, of all the choices, like, it's such a clear corrupted part of it, right? But then even more so just running in this election. I don't think it makes much sense from people that have fought like he has, even just from the medical side, to not see how broken and corrupt all this is and to think that you can affect that. But so the question is, do you think he believes that you can affect that change, or he just thinks that by going through this process, he can raise some sort of awareness? Or do you think he's actually, playing just a psyop or whatever else? Because I mean, there's probably more choices than that, but that kind of breaks.
I think that a lot of it has to do with a little bit of both column A and column B. I remember Tulsi saying, why won't you run as an independent? She goes, the climate is not set. The system is not structured to run as an independent. It's not, and until we change that,
that's a terrible
listen, I get it. And once again, I don't think that, and to make a point about what you were just saying there too, as well, is that it's not so much about winning. I used to say sometimes when you lose, you still win. And sometimes when you win, you're actually losing. So if you're winning an election or whatnot, or getting a seat, it's usually because you're capitulating to the powers that may be. So then you're moving away from what you stand for. But if you stick to what's that?
I said not usually, in my opinion. That's
usually.
every time,
But
you will not succeed without going through that process. I think that's been shown. That's my opinion.
If you lose and he loses the election or whatever the case may be, let's be honest, the election system itself, it doesn't make a difference. It's a captured, controlled system at the end of the day.
I think
yeah, I think he does. But if you can change the conversation, if you can change the narrative, if you can get your message across running that way, that's why I'm so excited for Derek and what he's doing, because he's been able to affect change and stuff like that. That's why I'm so supportive of him, even though I understand the system itself is not going to really produce any real change because the system is captured and controlled. But if we can change the narrative, we can change the conversation, so be it. I just think there's other things that, RFK, when it comes to his whole green mentality, his whole environmentalism, it is not like the conversations we need to have. It's more about moving into that technocratic age, and just reducing the way we consume energy and use energy, but not changing the way we extract energy. So, I mean, for me, it's, that's where he's tied to. That's where his money's coming from. It comes from this apparatus, and I don't like it, but I understand why he's doing it.
He must know with where the conversation. I mean, look, the medical freedom conversation is not even just alongside. It is overlapped with the technocratic direction of the environmental climate change lockdown. I mean, it's one and the same at this point. And I'm not saying that we can't have a valid conversation. This is some of the points he makes about environmental problems and what we're doing to this planet, because those things are important. And it's not the same as talking about the climate change psyop and the carbon tax and all that. But he must know that. And he must know that it's very dangerous. And maybe he does. And maybe there's something he sees. Like, that's always fair to point out. And we don't have all the cards. But now back to the point. And all that's valid, the debate. So if we know that if they're claiming that there's not going to be a debate, well, that just takes that third option, or I guess the second option, off the table. So you're not going to get to change the conversation. You're going to march in lockstep with whatever they tell you, the DNC. You know what I mean? I don't know. It changes.
Well, no, every single time Biden has a press conference, he comes out, does a rally, can speak out against it. He won't be able to directly, engage with Biden, but he'll be able to engage on Biden's narrative throughout this whole process. You know what I'm saying? And they're going to have events.
The debate is the only way to actually have, because the point we're making, because if like we saw with anybody else, the media can box you out. They can make a large narrative about what you are, and a lot of the wishy-washy people will go along with it. So the debate is the only real way to get that conversation in front of people.
Is that true?
We're going to win the election on TikTok.
No, but wait a second.
I'm talking about in the context of reaching the masses that are still tapped into the system, not people like us.
He's been called a quack. They've been smearing him ever since. And yet his book is there's a New York Times seller, and he sold a lot of books, gets a lot of attention. He's got 1 million people following on Twitter and whatnot. I think it's a pipe dream to think he's going to win this election in a controlled system. But if he can change the narrative and bring another voice there, that's important. I do also think that he's representing a lot of people on the left who kind of were quietly anti-vaccine, who were against the pushing of these vaccines and the mandates and whatnot. I think he's kind of representing that silent majority over there that he can also bring out and get them in the streets as well.
But now we're still running on this kind of like single issue election, like we are all the time. And it's a poll that
big issue matters. Though. It's a big issue, right?
Of course it is.
Some people are voting on this one issue. There's a lot of people.
Not some people, Pasta. Everybody. And I think that's the point right now, is they've rallied us all into this. Like, okay, here's a good example, and this is my opinion, of how they use their own failures, kind of like what you were just saying, Pasta, to rally the next agenda, right? So now they go, okay, we fucked up this whole thing. They all see what's going on. So now let's just channel this energy against the entire medical system, almost to the point to where it becomes ridiculous and hyperbolic, to where we're like, I'm not even going to take vitamin C anymore because I don't even know. Like that kind of overreaction, and all of a sudden we get channeled into the next thing. Now, I'm not saying, like, again, right now, let's put it this way. I did the same thing with Gabbard. Where it stands for me right now, there's things that I'm very concerned about with RFK. Well, to be clear, I'm not voting. I don't vote. I don't believe the system matters. I don't think your vote actually translates. I say that every single year, and I think we've proven that every year, and yet we still go through the hamster wheel. But that being said, RFK is a pretty solid candidate outside of those older arguments that I would like to hear him address. Do you still think people should go to prison for denying climate change? Because you might argue that he, through his medical freedom, has discovered what we're talking about, and maybe he hasn't addressed it since. That's possible, right? But all that aside, there's a lot of reasons to be skeptical, and especially since the Democrat and all this overlap. I don't know. Again, that's what we need to see it play out, I think.
Yeah, it's going to be interesting. I think people are sleeping on RFK a little bit more than they should. You know what I'm saying?
Dangerous.
If you look at it, if can he win, and you kind of accept the fact that he can't win, and once again, I believe that you should go out there and vote. I believe you should go out there, create a paper trail, create more evidence of cheating. You know what I'm saying? It might not be in the mainstream media, and people might not be talking about it all the time. But believe you me, as an election integrity activist, I know there's a lot more evidence right now of actual rigging and fraud and cheating than there ever was before. You know what I'm saying? We just can't get the megaphone big enough to get that message out there. But point. I think people are sleeping on RFK a little bit more than they really, you know what I'm saying? There is, and once again, it could be this trap door, right? Like, where are they moving us to? We should always be conscious about where they're moving us to. The next thing, I was just on Crosstalk talking about, like, well, what's the trap door going on in Ukraine? I mean, G20, both Putin and Xi Jinping, Lula da Silva, all the BRICS countries signed on the digital passports. So even though we have this kind of mentality where it's, Eurasia versus Oceania,
But
sorry,
see,
Steve.
But isn't that a mainstream perspective? I don't think who in the independent media binarily looks at it in a way where it's the good guy, Russia, China versus the bad. Like that's how they want us. And I think that's the two-party illusion of what we think. It's not the reality, right? That's at least that's what I would see it.
Well,
I don't. Setup. That's the whole point. Is that the entire argument around multipolarity versus unipolarity? Everything's being set up to put us into a position to where it literally is. Oceania's always been at war with Eurasia, and this is just what we do.
The worldwide two-party paradigm.
Yes, exactly. And now you've got people that are listening to Sergei Lavrov talk about, look, all Russia wants to do is honor the original charter of the UN. There's 5 permanent members on the Security Council that get to vote, and there's this and that. Well, that's a global governance. That's what that is. And it's been spun ridiculously that the original UN charter existed to stop the exact multipolarity or unipolarity that the US demonstrates. No, it was because the Rockefellers needed a way to get a corporate capture over the entire landscape of the planet. And they found a neat way to do it by taking some of the provisions from the League of Nations and then getting as many of their, scholarship trained people into the next generation of UN leadership via all sorts of programs and things like that. And we're headed into from either the Schwabian direction of the new global governance or the Lavrov direction of the new global governance that all originates from the exact same charter.
Right. That's how it kind of works, right? With maybe a little different flavor, but it's red,
of course,
blue.
Lots of different flavors.
Same thing.
Lots of different flavors. That's the beauty of multipolarity. You've got an entire freezer full of Otter Pops, except for their boots. So you can get blueberry flavor, ras blue boot leather. You can get lemon boot leather. Don't go for the orange boot leather. It's lame.
It's the equivalent of having 47 choices of cereal, but not really having free choice. It's the illusion.
It's all made from Monsanto fucking wheat.
Right, exactly. Yeah, I think the worldwide perspective is how we have. I mean, look, the whole Lavrov thing is so interesting. How they're all vying for power over us, all of them, and it gets this binary look where, like, back to Pasta's point is that, it's has to be acceptable for people to be able to stand back and be like, I don't trust any of these people. I don't think one over the other. I think my government is affecting my life, and I think that matters. And they're pitting us against each other in some global scale, as well as in everything's about divide and conquer at this point. It may have always been. That's an easy way to keep people uncertain, unsure of what's going on. But yeah. I definitely think that we can affect change in this, and we are doing that with what we're doing right now. And even back to your point before, I think it's a valid point to make about paper trails, right? You can vote and show them, but I still also think to a degree, we're talking about the global aspect. We're in a way being okay. We agree, in perpetuity, I guess for 4 years, what you are going to do. We agree with it by voting today. That because there's no other process where we get to jump in 2.5 years and be like, well, no, I vote against that one. No, your Congress and your government, they act like they vote on your behalf no, they're acting, as we can prove, for 50 years now on lobbyist money and everything else. It's, as Princeton found, a near zero, minuscule, what was the last word? Just, ineffectual. We do not have an effect on policy. That's been found over and over. So my point is, the paper trail makes sense to me. We can prove they're cheating. But at what point do we stop and realize that they don't even care that we can see that? Right? That they're just coming right out with it, the suing, the lawsuits, and we just get pushed forward. And as long as they have a certain number of, we voted for you, we agree, then things go forward. I don't know. It's just, I think it's a dangerous step.
I just hope that there's so much evidence and so much, transparency of fuckery going around that people eventually just make the decision to make that change to get themselves more power. I mean, I guess
How do you
when
make
you
that
see
change?
that, well, you do it little by little, right? You understand that your mechanism for having civil servants is your elections. It's the most important thing. This is no.
No, I'm sorry. I'm not saying there's a disconnect though, because the point was you vote in hopes that you can make enough. So where does the change come? Because all you're doing is going back again and voting. And my point is they can see that you see they're cheating. So you vote for somebody else, but that person's involved in the game. So they keep cheating. So, well, I'm going to vote for this guy this time or that girl. And the next thing is they just keep doing it and they keep cheating.
Well, how do they cheat? That's you want to recognize how they cheated and try to change that mechanism.
How though? If all you're doing is voting into a system where they're cheating, how are you affecting change? I'm not trying to put you on the spot.
Well, no. I'll give you an example because I did see this. I think that Colombia gave me more hope that this could change. They understood the mechanisms in which they were cheating. They constantly went out and voted. They saw where the area where they were getting most cheated, and they moved to fix that area. Right? We had COVID come into play, and we have all these COVID protocols when it comes to our elections that are now actual law. Because they've sold them as, it's inclusivity. It's, it's about equity. It's about giving people who normally don't have a right to vote and they don't have their voices be heard to let them be heard, with drop boxes and mail-ins and whatnot. I think the recognition of those systems being the way that they can cheat people have to be the main focal part. So then people can go in their own legislation and their own, county and whatnot and just show up to make those changes. I think that's the only way we could change these things. I'm not saying it's going to happen, but that's what I hope for. I hope for people who understand that they're in a mass mail out, that they mail out in LA County, for example, they mail out ballots to everybody who's on the voter list, understand that they're getting screwed. Even the grassroots people on the left who thought it was good at first realize that they're getting screwed and they go push to change that. And they just change one thing at a time and get them changed. But who knows what they'll use to fucking throw fucking into everything like they did with the COVID. Now, something else will happen and they'll be like, no, we got to do other type of voting. So, I mean, it's an uphill battle, but that's all I can hope for.
I don't know. My point, of course, maybe by going through this process, maybe I'm wrong and maybe you'll affect change. But my only point is that if we're working with it's the same old argument. If the only way to not lose in a rigged game is to not play. Now, that doesn't mean we just do nothing, but the argument is we know, which I think that's very clear from all sides if you're paying attention, that they're cheating. So why would they stop short on cheating from the other things? Or you go to vote in, anything where they know you can affect a change that hinders their ability to profit and control. Well, they're going to have a mechanism there. They're going to have people involved. That's just how, otherwise, why would they even play the game if they know that you can just go over there and change it tomorrow?
We've got 4 black socialists in their 50s and 60s who could affect zero change, who are going to be doing 5 years for propaganda crimes, for being agents of the Russian Empire.
Crazy.
Because and the point that a lot of people have made is that this is one of the things that Tucker Carlson was talking about at the Heritage Foundation before he got fired. Now, there's a myriad of reasons why that could have happened, and it's all going to be speculation. But the point being is that, even the thought of having black Russian friendly communist, socialist, liberationists in, freedom-loving Missouri running an office out of St. Petersburg, Florida, was too much for the FBI to handle. And that's too much. That's the federal police. It's the federal police force for the Department of Justice. That's a bridge too far for the DOJ. But they're going to let someone, I don't know. Is it do you see what I'm saying? The argument from the left is always the government exists to destroy any progress that the left could make. The argument from the right is the government exists to destroy any progress that we could make towards reducing the size of government.
I guess classically, I don't even think they
well, I mean, this is, classically, yes. At this point, whatever the right thinks they are, they're starting to be more anti-interventionist, much more so than what's perceived as the left traditionally.
Mm-hmm.
I think that what Gerald Celente was yelling at us is reasonable. If you figured out that this system is an oligarchy, you can't vote your way out of an oligarchy. It's part of a global cabal of connected sociopaths with shared interests and end goals that they have simulated, mapped out, have conferences for, tell us exactly what it is they would like to do to us, fund the technology in order to do it, elevate the people that create the technology, have them come out and talk about it, and it's still a fucking conspiracy theory. We should go ahead and provide an example of what we would like to do and how we think overall a better way would be, because it's the people in the middle that are still going, no, hang on, you can vote your way out of an oligarchy. No, hang on. No, it is, even though everybody's telling you exactly what they want to do, and they're doing it, it's still a conspiracy,
Right?
because we have too much invested in the status quo.
Right.
That's just it.
Well,
I mean,
it's not the only action we should take, right? I'm
Right,
saying it's one action that we shouldn't stop, participating in, even though it is nothing more than a ritual because it's completely captured and controlled. But it is the mechanism in which we're supposed to choose civil servants. So it's not the only thing. It's not the end game. I'm saying we
the PCR test is the only mechanism by which we can tell you have COVID.
Yeah.
No, but like on the other side of it though, Pasta. So it's not just that so if we believe that is seen as a consent, right? Like, so there's a level of consent needed to argue you're in charge, right? So if suddenly the argument being that if 90% of the population, which maybe that's where we actually are and that's being hidden from us, don't actually even vote, how can you argue they're in charge? And so I'm not saying this ends up being, I don't have all the answers. I don't know what the point is, that if that's the reality, don't we want to know that? You know what I mean? Like, so the bottom line is, if there's a level.
Would you agree though? Really quickly, would you agree there's a difference between just not participating and abstaining? Isn't that there's a big difference?
We've had a whole conversation about that.
Huge difference. So I am for the abstention.
Yeah.
I'm just not for yeah.
Well, here's your point. Here's a point though. It's saying, well, okay, let me combine these. I will give you that I probably should be going in and physically writing abstention. And that would probably meet these two worlds, because you're right. In fact, that's the whole point of it, is to be on the record where it says I abstain. But I also know they don't even count those, right? They don't even look at it. They don't tally them. They don't put in a list on the. So I'm just like, I'm tired of playing this broken game as if I'm having an effect. But you're right, though. I should be doing that because that is me doing my small part of. But to be clear, for those that haven't seen, I think you and I had that conversation, Pasta. Abstention is hugely different, and it's your right. Right. So right back to the founding fathers and the original concept, in that room, you could vote one way or the other, or you could abstain. And that could be because you disagreed with the choices presented. You didn't agree that it was presented properly, or you did, any number of things, or you just didn't want to vote because you were tired. I mean, the point is, it's your right to be like, I'm voting, but I'm voting abstention. And that goes down on the vote, right? The point is, they just a long time ago, like jury nullification, just kind of pushed that to the side and act like doing that is the same as not voting. It's not, though. It's actually voting. They've stolen one of your options.
We have a system where if you don't, right now, no matter what we say, what we do, they're still controlling everything we say and what we do, right? The powers that be, the ruling class. Well, if we don't participate, does anything change whatsoever? I'm not saying it's going to change that way. And that's why I don't belittle anybody who doesn't want to participate. But at the end of the day, if we sit back and, I'm saying we don't do nothing, there has to be some form of an action. If we all say, fuck you, we're not participating in this, we're going to lock the doors, we're going to blockade this shit, we're going to do whatever we got to do, that's at least taking an action rather than just kind of sitting back and doing nothing. And I don't have the answers on what we should do.
I have to push back on that. This is the point you just made.
Yeah.
We're not saying the only action is voting. That was your point, right? So the point is, by abstaining is not sitting back and doing nothing. My point is, that's the least effective option of all of the options we have on the table. Going out and protesting, speaking to your representatives, as much as I think those are minuscule things that have barely an effect, in my opinion, have more effect than going and checking a box and pretending like it's having any effect. That's my opinion. But I think we've proven that in a lot of different ways, which even you and I agree on to a degree. So all of that being said, this is where I get so confused. It's like I feel like we all agree with all the stuff we just said, and yet it still comes down where it's like, but I'm still going to go vote. And I support that. It's your right. But I just don't think logically that makes sense. It seems like a ritual to me, you know, and I'm not trying to offend you. I know that's
no, because I think there is something, the fact that people just go, oh, I'm going to do my part in getting involved. I'm just going to vote on this day. And that's all they do. You know what I'm saying? I'm saying doing everything you talked about. Go show up and, you know, get in front of your lawmaker's face. Go get in the streets, do that, and go vote too as well. Do it all.
I know that it's bullshit, and I know that it's probably all a scam, and I know that a lot of my friends and family are getting bullied and they're getting ostracized. Some of them might lose their jobs, but I'm still gonna put on the mask to go do the thing because that's what you got to do, right? I mean, what's the worst that could really happen?
And what should we do then?
Not put on the fucking mask.
And how has that changed things?
I mean,
how does it become
and do lots of other things, but that's step one. Because it's
why can't you do all of them? Why would you belittle
like,
people who want to do all of them?
Like every single time we've had this conversation, we haven't then gone on to all of the different solutions that we've all been advocating for years.
And I say you should do all of them.
So the default is always, well, you're just saying do nothing. And no, that's bullshit. And everyone has to know that at this point.
No, they don't know this at that point because that's basically what you're saying.
Everyone who's watching and participating right now has to know that at that point.
I was kind of thinking it was a humorous comparison until you made that they connected with me, and that you're right in a sense where, okay, so by just wearing the mask because of so-and-so, well, there's a negative to, you're hurting yourself, right? And you're actually making people, you're increasing your risk of illness. In fact, you're actually increasing the risk of whatever's going through that mask. That's another side of it too. There's been numerous peer-reviewed studies that talk about the aerosolization to the mask. Comparatively, that's why at first I was like, no, it doesn't connect. But by voting, you are perpetuating the problem, in my opinion, right? That's just, now it's not fair that we should gang up because I know Pasta disagrees and it's the two of us. But
I didn't even know this. Look, I didn't even know this shit was going to happen. And as a lark this morning, I put parable enthusiast as my byline. This is it was a little grenade. There was a little grenade analogy there. You got to wait a few seconds before it goes.
Because I think that we move away from what actually voting is. You know what I'm saying? I get that it's been captured and fucked with the United States, but and I make this joke all the time. I mean, Steve says there's something there, but I haven't hit it yet. Even Adam and Eve took a vote. You know what I'm saying? Everybody's going to vote. It's going to always be the people's choice, right? That is something inherent within us that we, as a society, even if we're anarchists, that we're going to have to say, okay, what do we do? How do we go? You know what I'm saying? We're going to have to matriculate back to it about, okay, how do we get things done as a community, as a society? Well, we ask and we find out what the consensus is, and then we move that direction. That's why I say don't abandon it, because that's
to be clear,
you know what I'm saying? Yeah.
I'm not abandoning. No, see, the vote. This is important. Nobody's saying voting, the simple process of tallying people's opinions in one or the other. No one's saying that's not a valid process. The point is that this has been broken, as you said, to begin with. So my point is that, yes, obviously, I think it's important. Even just like right now, raise a hands. Who thinks this is crazy? It's like that matters, right? Yeah. But if we knew that somebody was taking what we were doing and misrepresent, or that's not a good analogy. The bottom line is if the system is broken the way we know it is, the way I think it is, let's put it that way, that if I'm voting that they don't care, that they misrepresent it, in fact, they take my consent and change it to what they want it to be, and so on, then it's not just that doesn't represent other versions of voting, right? The bottom line is if it's an honest engagement, then yes, the voting is very important. And you can even argue that voting is still important if there wasn't some level of like tallying the people that agree or allow them to act in their name. Like, I think the way this all works is a problem because I don't think it's fair to argue that the government gets to just operate for 4 years in the name of the American people when we have one arbitrary vote about a few wedge issues. You know what I mean? Like the whole thing seems a little bit misrepresentative. So I think that's the point. So maybe we go back to individual tallying, like, you know, to your point, Pasta, if there was a way we could actually do this process right and make sure each vote was represented, and I knew my vote was that way and it was shown, and maybe that makes a difference and we vote on every single minutia that we go forward with. But to where we are now doesn't work. Go ahead.
If we dismantled the federal government entirely,
bingo,
that would be one step. That would be one fantastic way to help make each individual vote count exponentially more. And I would support a measure. I would support that. I would support, honestly, as completely just captured as at least the federal system is. If there are ways that communities can help regain a little bit more of their own space and their own community-wide autonomy by doing things like taking over their sheriff's department, kicking out some of the business interests that have an overextended reach in terms of influence in the community. This really only works if you don't have a military base in your town. Currently, at any rate.
This is a good example of what Pasta was saying, you know, the local vote versus the federal vote.
You know, these are things, these are steps that I would encourage to anyone and everyone to take, while understanding that if you're not simultaneously working your ass off to make sure that you're well prepared for your plan to fail that way, you know, then you're only half-assing it. You know, you can't just, there's been too much evidence. There's been too many demonstrations of problem, reaction, solution, and consequence for pushback within the construct of working within the system. For me, at least, to just be like, well, I'm only going to operate inside of that. You know, it seems like if longevity or a little bit more individual liberty or liberty within your own community is the end goal, then you kind of have to be, you know, conscious of what's going on over there, but always working towards that goal. Because really, if you believe at all in any of that ripple effect or woo nonsense, you guys doing that, us doing that, all over the place, that does push that wave out. More people see it and they go, oh, that's how you do that. Okay, well then let's do that. And if you want to get more representation within your own self or your own community for your vote, then the only way that you could do that is if you've secured actual liberty for the community. We don't have that at all. We have a federal system that operates to prevent that.
But I would argue, I agree with that, but I would argue that, like, I think we've all said this before, like, if I was going to go vote for like the local school board, I would, it's certainly possible that could be completely, you know, who knows, maybe even just from a local level, these evil teachers are lying to you, who ultimately knows. But I think it's important that you can affect the change. If you're going to do it, the local level, I think, makes the most sense, which is
the problem with the school board is that they operate under federal standards with federal funding.
Right. I was just local voting is all I'm really saying. I'm not saying
the local voting is tied to the national voting too, as well. That's why they've cut the whole system to have these elections in one day. You know what I'm saying? Like, so it's part of the whole system of the national elections. Your local elections are there too, as well, which is something I'd like to see us get away from. You know what I'm saying? But, you know, because I've witnessed it in other places that I can say, okay, this is more efficient, more transparent and stuff. And listen, I don't have all the answers there, and I don't belittle anybody out there. You know, I see some people in the chat, you know, normal fucking.
Yeah, I don't listen.
Whatever. You know what I'm saying? I don't belittle you if you think it's a bad idea. This is why I do it. And I understand that there's other work that's needed to be done. You know what I'm saying? It's not just a one thing that we can do. Oh, let's just vote harder and think it's going to change. It's not. There's a lot of work that needs to be done. But there's a reason why I still believe we should still consistently vote. And I've had the luxury to go to other countries and see them change and get to a point where they can get representation for themselves, where they get actual civil servants. So me seeing that has kind of affected my thinking and my tactics and my plans to move forward. So, you know, and at the end of the day, I don't belittle what Steve says. No, don't fucking do it. Chain the doors closed. You're still making a statement that way. You're still making a vote. You're saying that your voting system sucks. That's my vote, and I'm not participating in it. You're still voicing your opinion there, you know? But taking away the mechanism in which we make choices as a group, as a society, I think is just I don't know. I don't want to say nihilist or negative thing, but I just, you know.
I'm not arguing we take it away. That's the whole point about free choice. Like, the point is, if you want to engage in that, that's your option. I'm not saying remove the choice, because that's never the answer, right? But you know what, the point, who knows? Maybe Pasta's right and I'm wrong. Maybe we're wrong. Who knows? You know, the point is, we all need to come to our, you know, measured and balanced conclusions about all the stuff on the table, you know. And I think, to me, it's probably somewhere between these, and you know what, probably all of it together. And maybe it's local versus federal, and you know, but I just know people will question it, because especially at the presidential level, I just find it really hard to believe, on top of all the evidence, that at the very least it's, you know, like, let's just say the votes are being tallied and they still just are able, like we've seen testified to, that they can just flip it the other way around, you know. And so maybe, you know, I just think people need to question that and ask what we're doing. That's what we're involved with.
All I disagree with, and once you said the answer's got to be somewhere in between that and stuff like that. But this argument that if we stop feeding the system, then it won't continue to do what it's going to do. No, if we just don't participate, they're just going to continue to make decisions for us and choices for us.
What do you think stop feeding the system means?
Not participating in it.
What does that mean?
Not voting.
But let's
not doing anything.
And that's all that means.
Not participating in the system whatsoever. Not getting in the streets. Not talking to your lawmakers. Not, you know what I'm saying, anything. Just going about your regular life. Maybe, you know what I'm saying.
Okay, so who advocates that?
Go read the chat. I'm not telling you that you advocate for it, but there are people who just said if we stop feeding the system, then it will stop controlling us. Okay. I'm not putting this on you. There's plenty of people who say that shit all the time. They say just don't participate in it.
I think it's important. Go ahead.
Yeah, no, I've never heard that followed up with, and then keep doing everything that you ordinarily do. So it seems like, I don't know. It seems like an incomplete point. So I'm just not sure how to follow.
I think that's the problem. That there's always incomplete points that are made. It's always, don't do this. Let's look at this. Let's look at the negative. But there's no positive reinforcement of what to do moving forward.
I hear positive reinforcement for what to do moving forward all the time. It's the only thing that we have people on the show to talk about. When we talk to people in real life, that's all it is. And Forest Mommy's here too. I think she has some ideas.
Well, I'm not saying that you don't. I'm saying there's a lot of people who don't, who just did point out the negatives, and it's just a nihilist kind of mentality, and it's just stop feeding the system and it will fix itself. Right. There's not everybody who comes and says, let's make parallel systems or do whatever we need to do, or show the way forward to think for yourself.
Let me add one more point, and then I think what's important here is that nobody has the answer, right? I think we're all trying to kind of fumble around in the dark and find how this works, and it's okay that we don't know that, right? But I think it comes down to realizing that it's okay to question this system, and nobody's arguing, at least in this room, that we shouldn't also be taking action outside of abstaining. Right. And I think some people misinterpret that as either doing nothing versus the only thing. And I don't think anybody in the room is saying either of those things. Right. So I think that's
to that point, too. I think it's equally as nihilist to only harp on the couple of Debbie Downers that are like, oh, well, if you're just stop, when there are so many people who are advocating multiple different ways and options and means and methods to get out of this thing. It's, it's a self-perpetuating doom spiral.
I don't think
we should all try to get out of.
Yeah, I don't think it's necessarily harping on people, but we do have a society where people rag on people for their opinions on what they want to do. You know what I'm
I know,
saying?
and
And
it's
say,
fucking
don't do
hilarious.
this.
You
And
can make fun of them all day long. One of the people that does that is Forest Mommy, and I'm stoked to talk to her. What's happening?
Jess?
Welcome to the show. This is exactly what it's like. So hop in. Those are
I
lovely
liked
shoes,
it.
by the way.
My ears were ringing when you were talking about local stuff and
Right,
strategies. Because I'm team with you, Pasta. Like all these people always say, like it's this strategy or that strategy. Why isn't everyone out just doing every strategy for them that's best for them? Because if you're doing something that you think is worthwhile, you don't have time to criticize other people's strategies because you're focused so hard. You know, at least that's the message I try to send. But
I like Jessica
Being
right
hot
off
there.
the bat. I knew I would. Thank you, Jessica. In fact, I think you need to get some shoes. You don't have enough. So
know.
let's somebody get a warehouse thing coupon and send it on over. And what's the DWS, the warehouse, the shoe warehouse? So send that over.
Store.
Yeah.
I haven't bought any in years and years, though. That's the thing. So
I think the only time I ever communicated with you was
You
about
just have
maybe a
people
year
over
ago.
that are your same shoe size, and all of a
and-
sudden
yeah.
they disappear, and you've got a new pair of shoes.
Take your shoes off at the door, right?
Where you're like, "Hey, welcome to the house. Look, everybody's got to take their shoes off. You ever seen a magic trick? Here, look, I'm gonna make something disappear. You just pick them up and you put them on yourself, and you shut the door and you stare them down.
that'd be great.
Anyway,
Don't go to Steve's house. Note. I got it.
if you wear size 11s, size 11 and a half shoes, don't come over. Don't. I'm gonna take your shit.
How's it going this morning, Jessica? How are you?
It's going good. It's going good. Thanks again for inviting me on. And I'm sorry that Sugar Tits feels. We'll have to plan that out.
She just wakes up mad. It's all right. It's okay. It's okay.
Chooses violence, huh?
She does. She often wakes up and chooses violence.
Love it. No, I liked your guys' discussion, and everyone.
Well,
just
yeah.
gotta
I mean,
do.
jump right in.
Yeah. No, and I agree on does the votes. I always laugh because I don't even believe in the political process, and here I'm running for an office now. It's like I'll either prove it works or prove it doesn't work, and I'll get to see it from the inside and give it my own opinion, and because I only need. There's going to be like 10,000 voters in my district, or probably about 10,000, 11,000 people will vote. So like if we can't see if it's screwed up even at that level, so I'm like, there's a lot of different things that we're going to find out doing this.
Well, and to be perfectly honest, man, Arvada is a pretty fucked up little burg. It is. There's been some wild shit that's gone down there. I used to live there a long time ago, a lifetime ago. I used to hang out at the Arvada, Colorado. Used to hang out at the What the Hell Saloon frequently. I don't even know if that place is still there.
Probably not. It's changed a lot.
Biker trash freaking bar, Hell's Angels and Sons of Silence bar. And then also on football days, everybody blue collar and a bunch of Mexicans, everybody wearing Denver jerseys, shots of root beer if they scored. Yeah, it was a wild place, dude. A whole bunch of biker jackets and like a whole bunch of Mexicans over there, and a bunch of like local rednecks at the bar. It was fun. It was fun.
Eclectic.
But no, Arvada's fucked up though. It is. I could understand why you would want to try to like affect some change locally for sure. It's a wild place.
It all came together, and then the minute it happened and that journalist went after me, then I was like, okay, I guess this is meant to be. Kind of like everything there was like a catalyst in January that kind of like set a lot of this off, and then yeah, I might as well. I'm trying to spread. I'm like, if I win or not, I'm going to spread my message, and people are going to listen to me about they're like worried about libertarian politics coming in too. The mayor gave a state of the city address this last week, and he was like, please, we need to keep, because it's a nonpartisan race, right? But it's so bipartisan. Like it's always. So right. Mm-hmm. Yeah. And so like, he's like, we need to keep Democrat and Republican, and now even libertarian politics. So I'm like, I made him have to like say something. So like, screw you. And I'm like, yeah, you should be worried about libertarian politics because it's like politics to protect the people from the government at the very least. So I don't know. I realized this week how I know this sounds crazy coming from me in front of a wall of shoes, but like they're so snobby. These people on these local city councils, like they're just so snobby, and they all know each other at the chamber. You know, it's all about who you know, and so like. That's not the average person. The average person isn't going to chamber events. The average person isn't doing that. Most of my constituents aren't showing up and doing that. So I'm going to like represent the normal person at the very least. That's what
it's
I'm
funny.
hoping.
They're like the lowest rung of like the protectorate or, whatever government body. But they still see themselves as better than you, and that's how they always project it. Right.
Yeah. Well, they're the chosen class, right? They're the chosen ones. They're the same type of people that are putting in these positions, especially on the city council levels. We saw this in Shama Swan in Seattle, where they spent millions of dollars against her on her seat running because they knew they had so much, corporate interest that they wanted to get into play. But I mean, this is the thing I'm hoping for when you talk about a local seat, a local level. The local people can come together and demand another revote, maybe get it. I mean, it has happened in certain situations, and that's a lot more easier to control and to, inject some form of transparency. I've seen when situations like in Arizona, where they were talking about with this new revote they wanted to do, they laid out the rules in which they wanted to have a revote. And that was the actual system, right? And this is something that I love about Arizona, because they've come up with solutions now on how to fix the election system by identifying what went wrong, and everything they put forth was a system which I've seen overseas that actually works and is transparent. So yes, no, they didn't get the system they wanted to, but they understand what they need to do to get where they need to get. And that's
why the local part of it is important, right? Like vote in the local. We all agree with that, right? But I wanted to hear more on your side about, because I'm not familiar with your story, and maybe the people in the audience might not be. So would you tell us what you said? A journalist attacked you, and where are you running, and for what? I'm interested.
Okay. So yes, my name is Jessica Fetsky, Forest Mommy online. I'm in Arvada, Colorado. I'm in the Mises Caucus of the Libertarian Party. We've been doing this huge push about running local, because that's our last hope, really, if you want to put energy towards it. No bad towards anyone who doesn't. Like, I definitely regretted some of it, even where I'm at. But so I filed to run about a month ago. They didn't have any idea I was going to run. The guy I'm up against now, he filed after me. He's been in city council 12 years already, is these types. They've been, and now he termed out at large. So now he's going to try and get in the district. But they had no idea I was coming out of there. I posted on my wall. I filed my affidavit to run for District 4, City of Arvada, Colorado. And then within 12 hours of me posting that, this journalist who works for a 9 News out here, a news station, he took my picture. We've had like back and forth during COVID. That was the best part about Twitter, is you could call these people out when they were doing wrong. You could call them out and they hated it, right? If you bested them, they hated it. So he posted this thing, and it said, it was my picture that I had blocked him. He had blocked me. So he was looking at my timeline, so which I know is easy to do. And he's like, if you live in the city of Arvada, this is something you may take note. This she's this anti-vax girl who hates government is seeking to be in government, and she hates local journalists. And like, God. And then he posted like a couple other things trying to make me look bad. And then he posted my full affidavit. So it is public record, but the way he did it is technically doxing. And like because he put I didn't think it was going to be a big campaign, so I didn't get like a PO box or anything. And then so he posted my address, everything. He took that down right away. And then the next day he apologized, because what happens is he was his last tweet was like, "This is the public arena." And then as he started getting yelled at, he turned the comments off.
Of course.
So, yeah. This is the public arena. Yoink, nobody public talk to me. So then because of that, it got shared. Then people share it and quote tweet it like, this idiot. And everyone loved it. They're like, this girl sounds great. Like nice. She hates government and wants to get in government. So that kind of blew it up. I got 10,000. I was at like 20,000. I just got my Forest Mommy account back on Twitter too. And so that was growing. Now I'm back up, like I got 10,000 from that. I got all this, a lot more attention. I've been able to do speeches like with Kendra at Free Assange rally and stuff, and like blew me up. And now I'm like, okay, I guess that was my first 24 hours politics, was this dude like attacking me who's a professional. And he got proven wrong. He said it was because I had someone on my show who talked about his dad on Twitter. Like, it was just so bizarre. And his apology was like, you shouldn't have people on your show. A journalist is telling like someone you shouldn't have someone on your. It just was so bizarre.
And you were like, buddy, I don't hate local journalists, plural.
Yeah.
It's kind of just you.
Yeah. And you just proved me right. Like, you
Right.
totally
Yeah.
proved me right.
Well, think about what
He
that is.
doesn't-
Sorry,
Right.
think about the implication for his work, right? So he's willing to make this complete subjective argument about what you are and think, and are, like, how could he possibly know those things? This is the level of corporate journalism. It's all subjective arguments as long as it leans into the allowable conversation. You know, it's just pathetic. So people should go through and look at all of his past work and ask whether he actually knew what he was talking about, you know?
Oh, he's been like a 20-year journalist. He's gotten Emmys, and he actually did a good story on a girl out here who's been fighting the government too. So I'm like, what happened to your brain, bro, for you to like do that? And just like from like what man does that to some girl, like just some suburbs girl? I don't know. It's just really predatory and
Somebody's
weird.
paid to do it, probably, or initiated, say, driven to by some kind of source that just, you know, with 3-letter acronym.
Well, I'm like, gosh, just that's how outside of the system I am. They really had no control over me at all. Even the Libertarian Party can't control me. Like, I don't like
the Libertarian Party can't control anybody, man. I was texting Reed Coverdale this morning about some shit that the New Hampshire Libertarian Twitter tweeted and stuff. I'm like, dude, what is with you guys and just going after socialism, like, you know, giving capitalism a tongue bath and just, oh, Tucker's a socialist and whatnot. It's like, you know, it's to me, it's just signaling that you want to just push your system so hard down everybody's fucking throat, and you want them to accept capitalism no matter what, rather than having a conversation that, you know, hey, maybe we can meet somewhere in between. Maybe it's
I gotta say, I'm here for the Comrade Tucker arc. I am. I'm here for it. I'm here for it. I did. He did. The last clip we played on the show yesterday was him eating the bug burger.
Yep. What's
And
happening?
telling futuristic Bobby Lee that if anybody could bring bugs to the world, it was him. Look, man, he's an interesting fella. He is. And I think that he's an entertaining fella. I think anyone who shows up to Sonny Barger's funeral in dress pants, it has got stones. You know, I mean, that's wild as fuck to me. I think that the inevitable upcoming interview with Joe Rogan will be significantly less interesting than what we would all want to see, which is like the Drink Champs, or, you know, something like the Legion of Skanks episode with Tucker Carlson, where they make him do dabs.
Look, I'm just sure that we're not going to see Tucker reading Engels or talking about Trotsky or all that other shit. It's not going to happen. You know what I'm saying?
I'm just
the smearing and the name calling to me is just like,
I want to see that, though. I want to see Tucker in a sweater by a fireside. Stop the problem.
I think all of this argument about, like, even to the libertarian point, you know, look, I would argue a real libertarian, maybe you could back me up on this, Forrest, wouldn't be attacking somebody for their political beliefs, right? The whole point is, like, it's a strange dynamic where this is playing out where, you know, I don't think Tucker Carlson's a communist, but the point is that people make these arbitrary over-the-top arguments of the other side, and that's the two-party illusion, right? I mean, it's this breaking
pushes people into their corners, right?
Yeah, exactly. And I think Kim even made a great point about this on Twitter the other day, that it's like, and I'm like, almost to a degree that she's kind of taking the bait, where it feels like everyone on Twitter is radical and everything's happening. And my point is, it's like, well, I do think that's part of it, but likely a lot of bots and likely a lot of, you know, profiteering two-party individuals. And what it's designed to do is drive people either to the extreme sides or kind of act like, well, we lost already, so I'm going to give up. You know, and it's having an effect. But I think that only happens because enough people are doing what Forest Mommy is doing or what we're doing or what everyone's doing here and standing up and challenging the typical structure. So I think they're a little bit concerned. And I think that's why a lot of these agendas are coming out. I think it's ultimately a positive thing, but I don't trust Tucker Carlson personally. I think he does work, but
yeah,
go ahead.
I was just going to say that since you were commenting about you think it's great what Jessica and Forest Mommy's doing, do you want to be called Jessica or Forest or Mommy? Or,
yeah, sorry, I just
I don't even know what to call it.
Forest Mommy felt weird when I said
No, I know it's funny because I've been meeting people in real life since 2020 off of Twitter, and like people still always call me Forest Mommy.
Right.
Yeah, no shit.
But I don't care. Once my name went more public, then it was I don't really care.
Where are you at? What are you running for again?
So there's 4 districts in Arvada, and Arvada is basically a western suburb of Denver. It's in between Golden. This is basically Coors country where we're living here. We're in Coors country, but it's a District 4. It's the western side of Arvada. And and there's another district seat up for election, and there's another Mises Caucus guy running in that district. So it'd be kind of cool if like we could both get in, be like half the city council is libertarian minded people.
But Jessica, you understand, right? Like, you know that this is a captured system, that the election system isn't fair, it's not transparent, and that you might be just, I don't know what analogy I could use. I was going to say pissing in the wind, but
or I'll prove it's fault. Well, if I prove it works or I prove it doesn't work, I'm fine with either of those outcomes.
Well, that was my question: is why run into a captured system?
Because why not? I don't believe the federal can ever be controlled again. I don't believe we can ever. But I'm like, well, locally, we saw what's been happening out here in Colorado, especially there's a book called The Blueprint. They came out and they took over Colorado politics, kind of like the more like Jared Polis Democrats, and who are not. Jared Polis is not a libertarian. If you ever see anyone say that, they are full of shit and being paid by DC people, because
there's a lot of fake libertarians out there today for sure.
Yeah, like I'm like, no, he's and Justin Amash said he was a libertarian. It was like everyone, even the Colorado Libertarian Party, we're just like, what are you talking about? But
even Massey, to be quite honest, like he has a lot of
Massey's given him props before too. I'm like,
if you're in that system, in that position, I find it hard to believe, especially running as Democrat or Republican, that you can call yourself a libertarian. That seems kind of counterintuitive, but maybe it's changing.
You're just DC snakes at that point, in my opinion. Like they all just have one. Even like that was kind of the old guard of the Libertarian Party during COVID and stuff. It's just all these people who they care about DC, they care about all this like, we have to please our masters stuff, and it's like, no, that's not what it's about. And so we're getting better. Like states getting better. Colorado Libertarian Party's doing fine. And like I said, they don't control me. We're still very individuals. And there's people. I've done some crazy stuff. They still accept me. So it's like,
well, I think it's awesome that you're running, because even if you are playing into a captured system, your voice can still be heard. For some reason, when people run for office, their voice gets elevated, even if they don't even have a fighting chance what's going on. I mean, there was some impact that Derek Bros was able to make on his city council, which they adapted some of his ideas moving forward. So I just think it's an awesome that you are running, and I support you 100% for doing.
Thanks. Yeah, the media hates me already. I've already had like 3 hit pieces.
Good.
So it's like
you're on the right track.
And that's the whole thing with like, even for presidential 2024 Libertarian Party, if Dave Smith does run or whatever, it's like, we know he's not going to win. We know he's not going to get the vote, but he has a platform and he can get a message across, and it's about getting the message out. Like,
well, let me ask you guys something, and this goes into the same conversation since it's kind of clearly kind of carried over. I think so. I find it hard to believe that we wouldn't have more people voting for a libertarian candidate, with how many people identify as libertarian, how many people identify as independent, and how many people clearly on the record see the problem of the false paradigm. And yet still, and we've had people last run as libertarian right to the end, and yet we don't see it. Now, I don't buy that personally. I mean, I don't think libertarians are stupid enough, but that I shouldn't, as people are varying levels of intelligence, but most people aren't stupid enough, I don't think, to buy into the lesser of two evils argument or most important election of our lifetime. It's the same mantra every time. So how do you guys make sense of that? Because I would argue we would have had more votes in a libertarian or alternate candidate at some point, if with what we see the numbers,
yeah, I don't have an answer for that either. What I hear most is, "Hey, well, we can't split the vote," or if you vote
Right.
you vote for Libertarian, you're voting for a Democrat, which is kind of funny in my race right now. The GOP all supports me, even though I'm kind of crazy. Like we're all buds, so like they're not gonna run someone because it would kind of split the vote and make the Democrat
That's
win. So it's kind
interesting.
of like the opposite. It's kind of fun out here. Everything's just
That's
crazy
interesting.
and wild. It's kind of fun.
Out in the cold for leftist libertarians like myself over here. But I mean, here's the thing, because the system is captured, but the cheating only exists on a how can I frame this? On enough to get you over the top kind of level. In other words, they still have to do everything they have to do. They still have to push the propaganda. They still have to get their minions to go and vote. They just have enough cheating mechanisms to get them over the top. That's why I think, though, even though we've had this captured system, we have a lot more libertarian voices out there. Libertarians are the third party. They are the only ones to get on the debate stage. Why? Because they have found some success and gotten votes in last elections. That's why.
Yeah, but that kind of seemingly still contradicts the point, though. Is if we can have, like, look, if we have the largest voting bloc in this country represent 50%, as far as I last saw, independent, and it's been this way for a while. That doesn't
the
make any
largest
sense.
voting block is people who don't vote.
Exactly.
And then the next largest voting block is people who identify as independent. And then it's somewhere between 27 and 22% on any given year. You'll find an R or a D.
Right. Well, and interesting what Jessica said too. It's interesting. It almost seems as if the right kind of sees the Libertarian Party as like adjacent to the right, which is interesting, right? But either way, I still don't think that makes sense. I mean, obviously the viewers and you guys get my point. I think it's indicative of manipulation. It doesn't add up year after year after year that people keep getting the same game, keep falling for it, and keep not voting what they actually believe in. Maybe. I just don't buy it. I feel there's a lot of examples like that. That's a subjective observational one, but you combine that with all the evidence federally, and I think it's pretty clear it's being manipulated. But I still would never, like from Jessica's perspective, try it, go for it, right? I mean, I think the local is the only place we're going to make any difference. And I think that you can effectively build out, like Pasta's saying, change the local and build out from the bottom up. And you can affect change that way. But I think in the moment, the voting for the larger stuff just doesn't really translate. Again, same point, but I think that's interesting because libertarians, it's growing.
And I'm going to be very vocal and open about it all too. Like, cause I have the platform. So I'm like,
good.
I'm going to show everything, all these, like, that's cause I'm like pretend I'm dumb. Like I'm dumb getting into the system. So like, they have to teach me everything. And like, I am one of their constituents, basically. Like I am, that's how the normal person is. They don't know this shit. No one, people have such a hard time paying attention to local too. Like at Easter, they like the whole hubbub came up about what happened. And then they're like they did not want to hear anything about local election. Like it's just too much to even think about, And so it's like, if we could get people to stop paying attention to the well, we need to still pay attention to federal, but it's just so easy because that's what's on the news all the time. That's what everyone talks about is the federal stuff.
I think it's by design. But I think it's because they realize the change that we can have the most effect on is at the local level. So they want you to focus all your energy on something.
It's been ignored, and I'm guilty of it too. So,
well, not only that, but the media ecosystem is such that they've got it down to a handful of companies that all get a couple of different pre-produced scripts, and that's what they're reading. That's what they're told to read. If they have a local story, it's, oh, Bob found a kitten. Or something like that. Or if it's a local story, it's, dude got shot, something like that.
That seems more accurate.
but outside of that, that's what your local TV media effectively is. And I mean, I know this, especially with Denver, because I've done a bunch of events with Kendra. That's why we're having she texted me like right after the thing. She was like, dude, you have to call Jessica like today. You should do that today. Have you done that yet? Have you done that? And I'm like, I'm not done reading the first text.
Why haven't you done that? I haven't even gotten to that part.
But I mean, specifically with Denver media and 9 News, as a matter of fact, double fuck them. Okay. Double fuck them.
They're Tegna, or they were a Tegna station, which is even more evil.
What is that?
So there's a like umbrella company called you know how like you've seen the videos of them all saying the same thing. So there's umbrella companies. This one called Tegna owns like 60 stations across the country. And funny enough, do you know who's on the board for Tegna? A bunch of ex-Pfizer executives, which is just so bizarre. And they control 60 stations across the country. And it's just like, oh, that's not nefarious at all. I do wonder because we've been pointing that shit out too, doing deep dives on 9 News. And it's like maybe he did get told to do it. Who knows? Like,
I bet you'd find something similar on even the smallest local channels everywhere you look today.
Oh, yeah.
And maybe not Pfizer.
It's all conglomerated.
Yeah.
And,
But we've created this own ecosystem, right? Outside of it. I mean, we're trying to fight against it, you know.
I think we're winning.
I
do. I really do.
I love that. You know, it's hard to deny the fact that they're starting to look at us and take their beats or their rhythms from what we're saying, what we're talking about, that it's finally caught up to them. But just going back really briefly to what Jessica is doing, when Jessica runs, when she's done with her election, there'll be a blueprint in which election integrity activists can look at and go, okay, Jessica, this is the area of concern. This is the area in which you got cheated. It's the mail-in system. See how you're getting with in-person voting? You're getting 4, 5, 6% more than you would if it was a mail-in voting. We can look at these things. We can look at these blueprints. And this is what I hope. You know, when I was in Nevada and I was talking to people in the, what county is that? Clark County, Nevada, the Mises, not Mises, they were Mises Caucus guys, but the Clark County, Nevada Libertarian Party. I was talking to them, hey man, I'd like to work with some of your candidates and looking at their elections, looking at the voting system so that we can pinpoint the areas in which we've been cheated and we can highlight that and talk about that until they change that. So, I mean, that's what I hope for and that's why I say create a paper trail. And I think Forrest Mommy will have that when she is done. She'll be able to look at the numbers, just look at the data and see the areas in which they are cheating. And as long as we're continuing to highlight that, that's the quickest way to get some change. You know
what I'd love to see, Pasta. You know, what'd be neat is if you, which it sounds like you're already going to be doing, keep an eye on what her run and we should break it down. Like, you know, especially if you do feel like there's cheating, it'd be a cool little focus to be able to like break it down in real time and prove that. You know,
yeah, and it's like I said, it'd only be like 11,000 votes, so it's not like
that'd be interesting.
You know?
Nobody catches anybody cheating. The math catches people. I can tell you in Arizona and Maricopa County, the cheating came from mail-in ballots that were sent in Republican districts and Republican strongholds. In other words, that's where they dropped the ballots off to cheat at, is they stuffed the ballots in Republican districts. And that's where they put a lot, and it was all mail-in, and we had that evidence. We saw that in Arizona, Maricopa County, where the majority of the votes are coming from, that you had the 30% of Republicans, of Republican voters voted, this is early voting now, 30% of the Republicans voted Republican, 30% of the Democrats voted Democratic, but at the independent votes, almost 75% of those independent votes went to Carrie Lake. Not to Carrie Lake, excuse me, what's her name? Katie Hobbs. So we knew right there, we knew exactly where the cheating came from. We saw it, and we could highlight it like, okay, this is where it's coming from. It's coming from these early votes in these Republican districts where independent people registered as independent. You want us to believe that 4 out of every 5 independent voter voted for Katie Hobbs? No, we know where it's at.
Yeah, I'd like to see
exactly.
I'd love to see that from her. So, you know, if you got the time, that'd be cool. I mean, because I have no doubt that even at these small levels that, you know, whether it's some like coordinated federal response or just the average person in this position who's aware that it happens in the entire political spectrum, so they apply that same thing, you know, I think there will be cheating to some degree to keep people, you know, people like Jessica out of it, because I think that even at this level, there's still insiders, as you're talking about, Jessica. It's the same people that have been there for year after year. You know, they want to hold on to that power. So I'd be interested to see how it plays out.
Yeah. I like the guy I'm running against called me disruptive too. And I'm like,
exactly.
This is encouragement to me. They have done nothing but encourage me this whole time. Even though they're trying to make me look bad, I'm like, you're just encouraging me.
I mean, they don't
just wait.
There are a lot of people that still haven't figured out how the internet works. There's a lot of people who still haven't figured out that there's a reduced amount of give a fuck amongst a lot of people, including people that do run for office. Jeremy Kaufman is one of those people. You know what I mean? Like those ads were freaking hysterical.
War is
They were
gay.
absolutely hysterical. And here's the thing, this system, the oligarchy that we live under, and the federal government that is its public relations firm, it hates it truly hates being mocked. Truly hates being mocked. It truly hates it when people look at it for what it is and talk about it for what it is. And no matter what you think about voting, I do know this: the establishment feeds itself and perpetuates on apathy, period, across the board. And if you are nihilist enough to make a dry joke, then you're nihilist enough to do that at the federal government too, and at these oligarchs too, because I know this, and I would love it if more people understood this. Their power derives from our belief. And this overall is a relatively small number of people who are very, very, very weak of spirit, to the point to where they train up brainwashable young men and now young women in order to go out and do their killing and their violence for them, because they're not capable of it themselves. Not physically, not mentally, not spiritually, incapable. But they've got resources that we've all collectively chosen to believe in too. So there's the rub.
Yeah. Yeah, I agree. I mean, I like your point though about these people are. It's kind of like you look at these stars in Hollywood and they present themselves as so proud and big, and then you find out they're just like petty children when it comes down to the most minor things, that my blue check mark and whatever else we're seeing.
Not talk
right
shit
now.
About Alyssa Milano today, okay?
Bette Midler's the one I've been focusing on because it's more hilarious. But either way, Bette Midler was just like a meltdown, and then she came back on and was like, "Wait, I got it back. But I didn't ask for it. Am I bad?" Like, it was the weirdest thing. And then he took it right back again. Hilarious. And she changed her image to this gigantic check mark. Like, think about the hubris that's needed. Like, you need that check mark. Anyway, I think you're right. I think that's kind of a lot of
quick addition to the conversation. Our resident marmot artist has a related addition to the conversation. I would like to introduce everyone to the muskrat. This is what it puts the Neuralink in the skin, or else it gets the musk again. We've got a little bag of brain chips. Of course, a blue check mark, and a nice upside down cross. Yeah.
With a Tesla on fire, which I think is fantastic, because that's pretty much what seems to happen these days.
He just seems so part of the circus, though, right? Like, it's people are still praising this guy because he's trolling all the Democrats and the shit libs and everything. But it's like, but guys, don't you understand where this guy came from? And
he wants to put something in people's brains. You can't trust anyone who wants to do that, even if it's like for a good reason. You got to be kind of skeptical.
What? I'm going to hook you up to the cloud? You guys, the cloud is somebody else's computer.
Yeah,
you know that, right? It's a fucking server farm in Utah. That's the cloud. The NSA owns it.
When he said we'll coup who we want to coup, that's when I'm like, all right, fuck this dude, I'm out. Like, in no way. Not playing there.
He's made a lot of statements like that about foreign policy, but what I find the most crazy is the simple things that we're seeing right now that people don't engage with, where the whole argument was about Twitter files and all this stuff was going to happen, and the platform was going to be about free speech, and none of that's actually panned out the way it was promised. But so he one of the main things, I think it was the CBC pushed back on the whole government tag and said, no, we're less than 70% government funded, which is a really stupid response. But it's so he responds by changing it to 69% government funded, and I'm just going, okay, that's funny. Like, I thought that was hilarious, But we also need to stand back and go, so it's arbitrary then. So you're just individually, as in one person, and probably in your underwear at home going, I'm going to do the, whatever. Like it's not what we were promised, or the blue check, for example, like giving it and taking it. And it's like, so we're all, people are, none of it seems like a transparent process. And so you've got a lot of these people that love to see it. Even I enjoy watching him troll these people, but that stops them from realizing that they're being played. Like sort of how the whole, we saw the interesting conversation of like the trans thing explode. And then all of a sudden you got the right-wing people attacking the Second Amendment. And I just don't get why we can't see how easily we get swayed using the political game, the two-party paradigm. It's kind of scary, but I'll leave it there. I got to break off, guys, but it's really nice to meet you, Jessica. I just gave you follow your campaign.
Thanks.
All right, guys.
Ryan. Thanks, man. Thanks. And what's the rest of your day like?
I've been getting, I want to get Mark Skidmore's interview. That I've had that, and they keep getting just buried. Mark Skidmore, PhD, was the one that put out the article, or excuse me, the peer-reviewed, highly sound study that discussed the social circles. It was a poll, but the point was that ultimately he used the data to extrapolate out, going, well, if this is what people said, then we could extrapolate that out, assuming it, not knowing it's for sure, that would suggest 288,000 deaths because of the injection. That it is the most common process. You do a poll and you can extrapolate it out. People do it all the time. You can find 100 studies doing that in a pro way about the vaccine. They don't care about that, right? But so this was an issue for them. So the editorial team steps in and actually retracts it. And so we want to do this whole focus on how that's actually happening today, where very sound peer-reviewed science, then they just circumvent the peer review process. It's just crazy and not scientific, but I want to get that out. So you can check that out. And it's an important study, and he's doing really important work. Other than that, I think I have a couple articles to get out, but I still want to shout out Robert's great work on the Sudan. I think that's still a focus right now. It's interesting.
We used that as part of the conversation on Slow News Day on Sunday.
Good. It's such
an
obvious,
excellent article. It was.
And one of the only people I see really kind of pointing out the dynamic of both Israel, the UK, the US, and their involvement with this openly torturous, murderous group that not very different from what the US government usually supports overseas, but it's on the record. Like they're murderers, torturers, home raiders. And the only difference is that they are okay to work with as long as they're fighting for US interests. It's the same way as always. Even this and the Sudan, the last point, and then I'll break off. It's important to remember, and this is one point that Robert made that I don't see anywhere else, that the whole normalization deal with Israel. Remember, the point was that the Sudan was on the terrorist watch list, and all they did was nothing you could prove. Nothing has changed. All they did was say, well, if you normalize relations with Israel, well, we'll take you off the list. So all it shows you is that either they were never terrorists and it was all about politics, or they are terrorists and they don't care about that, and it's all about Israel's normalization. Either way, these people are terrible. The people that our governmental body, if they're supporting the worst people around the world today, Nazis in Ukraine, and on and on and on. Yeah. So I hope people will look into
Biden administration, same as Trump administration. Exactly. They did the same thing with Morocco, right? Oh, dude, you normalize, you recognize Israel, and everything's cool with us. Same thing with fucking Trump that it was in Biden's over here in Sudan.
Exactly. Great point to make too. It's a two-party illusion. Go ahead.
I was asking because I was going to let you know that if you felt like it, I can throw you a link later, and if you wanted to drop in on Blunt Force, you're welcome to.
Oh, is it tonight?
Yeah, it's every Tuesday. That's the thing.
Okay. I thought you said Friday. Yeah, send me a link. I don't know if I can make it tonight.
Scott's show's Friday.
What's that?
Scott's show's Friday. The injected thing.
Yes, right. Yeah. Okay.
And I deliberately didn't want to run over that because I like that show. That's fun. It
is. I still got to get on there too. I keep wanting to surprise fake call like they used to get on Loveline and be like, I've got a sexual problem, and be like, that's what it is. It's like a sex, like a relationship show for uninjected people or non.
It's the people who created the Unjected app. The co-host was Scott, and then my buddy Zach from the Unfit Statesman, who's just a hilarious douchebag. I love that guy.
And now Peter McCullough actually has backed the with the wellness center, like the other things they're building onto, as well as the platform. So it's getting some good attention. It's good stuff.
Yeah, it is. They got like job finders and all kinds of cool things. Well, Ryan, thanks again as always, brother. We'll see you soon. We'll see you next week. TheLastAmericanVagabond.com for all your Last American Vagabond needs.
Peace, guys.
Later, Ryan.